folks, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show, and joined today by a total character, extraterrestrial rhythm maker, Alan Cook. Welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you, Jake. Glad to be here.
Can you get the bow out and start and talk about how you can create that kind of tonality with it, and how you learn? Who taught you that?
Well, it's something that I've seen. Obviously, percussion ensembles have been known for using bows to extract overtones and get the higher frequencies out of gongs, pot tops, what have you. You know, various and sundry metallic objects. And so, you know, it's something that I knew was part of the repertoire, part of a percussionist's arsenal of ways to, you know, create sonic.
Can you demonstrate a little? Can you
Sure.
play a little bit with it? Because I mean, it really is. I mean, it's totally out of the Gravity Adjusters expansion band.
All right, man. Well, here's a small Chinese type gong. Here, I'll put it on my snare. So the bow just starts the vibrations going. As it starts to vibrate, once it's already sort of initialized, that's what happens with gongs a lot. You have to start them vibrating a bit, and then you can get to the deeper overtones or the higher overtones.
So you have to get it vibrating first.
Yeah, you want to get it warmed up just a tad. And also, I use the edge of the bow rather than the flat to get even higher. It seems to create higher. Is able to access the higher frequencies.
When were you? When I mean, how early was it that you became entranced with world percussion? What was the hook for you?
Well, probably the same time when I started playing drums. I became aware through folkways recordings, African drums, African drummers, different regional drummers. You know, Senegal, Ghana, Nigeria, etc. You know, Burundi drummers.
And this is clearly more like, I mean, we're not talking about trap set drummers. We're talking about hand drums.
No, like drum choir. Sometimes they would call them drum choirs, you know, because there would be a lead drummer, and then there'd be the accessory drummers, you know, the guys that would keep the rhythm, the agogo bell type thing, or all those different things.
You knew, though, early on that it was many people. When you first heard those Folkwave records, you said, how are they doing? It sounds so complex. But then it turns out each person has a very simple pattern to play. They all fit together.
Right. That's part of it. Until you become the master drummer, and you essentially are the one that talks through the drum. That's another thing about African drumming, I think, maybe as a whole, is that the drums also reflect or mimic the vocabulary, the speech patterns of the people that are playing it. So they're used for royal events, things like that, praise of the king, praise, or just talking to the community as a whole. And that to me was very intriguing. And I love that, just that thought. To me means you were woven within the fabric of African society. Drums are right at the heart of it. They're not separate, they're not entertainment, they're a social need. You know.
Well, when I talked to Masakela, he said, I mean, he was devoting it the rest of his life to the folkloric tales that are told through the drum. These stories. I mean, have you been to the motherland?
I have not.
So then, I mean, how did you get an authentic experience with this in Southern California outside of Folkways Records?
Well, you know, fortunately at Cal Arts, they had the Ladzekbo brothers that were teaching the African program there.
What year was that?
When I first was exposed to it, it was probably like in the early 80s, maybe late 70s.
What were they, and how would they teach? How is it different than you know, sort of Western academia?
Well,
even though it was being taught in the West.
Yeah, as we've talked about, or as you mentioned, you know, there are set patterns that in parts of the drum choir, parts of the ensemble play that does not vary. So they would, from my way of thinking and observing them, they would teach those first and let the people become part, let you become part of the sound that is being made. Relationship of your part to the other parts, and then you're allowed to start learning the other parts, you start to see how vital each part is to the whole. So I think that's, and also dance was very sort of
interwoven in the society as well.
Interwoven with it, yes, yes.
How did you meet Bobby Bradford?
I'm trying to think of when I first met Bobby. Well,
because that dude is an iconic
absolutely.
Southern California.
Oh, absolutely.
He used to play with the skipper Henry Franklin and John Carter and those cats.
Yes.
I mean, that was some badass.
Definitely.
And I'm still looking for him. I haven't gotten a chance to interview him yet, but I saw that on your credits, and I'm like,
you need to, for sure.
Were you with Bradford when you were just a young gun?
Well, no, I knew. So I was living down in Orange County. That's kind of where I grew up, and but I knew up in Pasadena, the Little Bighorn, that Bobby was kind of central to.
Now, what's that? I don't know what that is.
That was the space. I think it was on Colorado Boulevard, where cats like James Newton, David Murray, Bobby. Obviously, John would come through, Vinnie Golia, people like that, the Klein brothers, etc. All the people that were the L.A.,
the cats,
mafia
the
at the
cats,
time. Yeah. So I never.
It was called Little Bighorn.
It was called the Little Bighorn.
And it was essentially an artist space, or was it?
It was.
So it wasn't a private club or anything.
No,
like that.
not at all, not at all. But by the time I was living up in that area, and I actually went to some classes at Pasadena City College, where Bobby was teaching and had been teaching for a number of years. Little Bighorn had gone by the wayside. It just didn't sort of sustain itself for some reason. So yeah, I wasn't able to be there for that.
But I think the more I listen to melodic improvisation, I hear the rhythms and the cries of the African, just African American people, just the diaspora of it all.
Yeah.
Was that something that was appealing to you? Is that why you sought out Little Bighorn as well?
Yeah,
what I'm saying is that it's not. I hear a lot of classicalization of jazz today.
Right.
I don't hear those rhythms as much, and I'm just trying to talk to someone like yourself who's really dedicated themselves to the lineage of diaspora.
Sure.
If you could riff on that.
Well, I'm thinking of. I'm just you saying that makes me think of one of my favorite recordings, which is John Carter's Castles of Ghana, and he had a series that essentially focused on the West Coast, that area of Africa where the slave trade was so.
Especially brutal.
Yeah, it's brutal and especially momentous and life changing for those that were put into bondage, and so all of that, how it carried to the New World, all the African diaspora, how things spread by many different routes. I'm sure. Not that I'm aware of all of them, because I think of Brazil. There's a lot of the Afro influence there. Cuba. All of those things.
Absolutely.
All of those carry that, still have that. But then getting into to Bobby, John Carter, what they were doing with their instruments. They weren't playing drums. They were playing clarinet, trumpet, cornet. But the way they were approaching music still had that fire, that kind of group improvisation, that group ecstasy.
Conversation.
Yeah, conversation, absolutely.
And then it would go through this. It was called Castles of Ghana.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was rooted. The rhythms were rooted in African rhythms, or did they come to? It was more the Brazilian Afro rhythms. Like once the slave trade started to occur, just stayed in the motherland.
Well, I think from what I know of that recording, and Andrew Cyril particularly playing drums on that recording. He, along with Milford Graves, Rashid, their dialogue with the drums, thing that they would have going on, that was like this. I got these bells from Omar Clay, who was once.
I can't believe. No, I just passed on a record downtown where it was some folk psych record that Omar's playing on.
Right.
He's part of M Boom.
Yes.
With Mentia.
Absolutely.
And those cats.
Yeah.
You got those from Omar Clay?
These belong to him. There's actually at least.
Can you play a tribute to Omar Clay right now for a minute on those?
I can do what I can do.
Yeah, I can't believe.
Yeah.
That those were Omar Clay.
Well, so this was after Omar had passed, and I think his daughter had these, and she wanted to get them to someone that they would continue to, create the music or carry on the legacy that her father had set. So
you want to explain to the layperson what those bells are exactly?
Well, these are. They're supposedly they were from Cameroon, and they were on like a rope. And
Right.
I don't know whether Omar hung them and had all of them accessible to play with mallets or anything, or if he just used them to create a huge sound of bells.
But they were vertical.
Well, it was on a rope, so it came in the box, and they were all strung together. And then I took them out so I could play them, with mallets and things like that. But looking at the bells, some of them have, I think it has grease on them, as if they were fashioned in Greece. It's not on that one. So that kind of blew my mind, because this is.
What do you? I mean, that's blowing my mind. I'm not totally processing what you're saying. What are you saying?
Well, what I'm saying is these. I feel these might not have been made in Africa.
Product of Greece.
Yes, but somehow they got to Africa.
And Omar.
Yeah.
Omar got them, dude.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
man. Well, I mean, can you play just to hear, so we can hear
I'll
the tonalities?
Sure.
Omar's looking down on us right now,
I
man.
hope so, man. I hope so.
Do you feel like what is the most salient advice you can give to younger cats about not playing machine parts, but really finding your own groove? We talked about inner drumming with George Marsh, for instance.
Right,
Just letting the body dance. Just what is your philosophy on that for younger cats who have been inundated with click track and very vertical rhythm?
Right. Well, for certain, check out as many of the percussion families that populate the world. Seek out Javanese or Balinese gamelan. Seek out African drumming. Seek out Brazilian or Rasta, drumming. All of that, and then also don't.
But aside from listening to it, don't you have to play it on the bandstand?
Yeah, and find other people to play with, and just create. Don't try and make something set according to what you think you have to achieve. Just relate to the instrument itself. Let the instrument speak to you, and interact with it to allow it to speak even more. Find all the kind of timbres that you can. I mean, I have this thing here. This is a saw blade, or a blade from they cut tile, and stuff like that. I mean, this thing is awesome.
My God.
You look for sounds. Yeah. Just look for it. It's all there.
Did you ever reach a point where you felt maybe someone told you were copying somebody too much, and who was your greatest teacher and why?
That's a good question.
Like early on, like especially when you were just trying to find your own voice.
Right. Well, I was essentially self-taught. I started on my own, listening to, hearing music and trying to approximate it and being inspired by it to want to express it through myself as well. I did have, early on, I knew I needed a little bit of maybe exposure to reading, doing the Jim Chapin book,
four-way coordination, yeah,
exactly
absolutely,
right,
yeah.
Right. So my first drum teacher at this music store, he was a serious jazz aficionado, jazz
freak,
fan.
yeah.
And one thing that really struck me was when I think back on it, his left hand, how he held the stick was exactly like Tony, how Tony held the stick. That's where the thumb's very up and he was just so exquisite or elegant in how he played the drum set. Each stroke was to mean something. It wasn't just random. And so that kind of struck me as being intentional as well when you play. Now, I'm not.
But how was it? How did it come across as authentic? Like he was still in the moment, but he was painting in that moment.
Yes.
With logical sequencing.
Yeah. Again, using the drum set, which is an American, if we could say, just as jazz is an American.
Sid Catlett or whoever who first trap set, is that who you think?
Sid Catlett? Well, I think it might have been before that. I mean, obviously we have Baby Dodds.
That's right.
And I think Baby might even been a little before Sid. I'm not sure if they were quite contemporaries or peers. But I think around about Baby Dodds' time and some of the earlier. I can't think of all of them. I mean, obviously Sonny Greer with Duke, he was the one that had the whole 9 yards. The timpani, the wood blocks, the temple blocks, all that stuff. So but I was really at that point, I think at that time, probably the epitome of what a drummer / percussionist was. He wasn't just a drummer. He wasn't just playing drums. He was playing all these other things. So,
do you?
I don't know if that answered your question.
No, I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is the idea of like a bass player, upright bass player who wants to sit in and play with a percussive ensemble, like Dave Holland.
Yes. Yeah.
When you played with him,
yeah, how
did he assimilate to the music?
Well, the thing is, you sort of assimilate to him because he is such a strong player. We were just studying and studying his compositions and playing them, and he happened to play with us as we were doing that up in Banff. And but yeah, for me, he's. I think there's no one stronger as a player, a teacher, a band leader, a composer. I mean, there's some. As being a drummer or just being a musician, he is someone that I would look to as the ultimate kind of role model, for what I might aspire to or do aspire to, which is excellence, fire, passion, instrumental expertise because you have studied and practiced, and also played with everyone that you can in every sort of kind of setting.
Go deeper on fire.
Well, if you've seen Dave, and I saw him, one of the most moving ones for me, or most ones that affected me the most deeply, was seeing him play duo with Sam Rivers several times at the Lighthouse in Hermosa Beach.
Conference of the Partial Birds.
Yeah, right. Yeah, around that time. Yeah.
Wait, it was just horn and bass, or no?
It was. Yes. Yeah. Sam, he would play piano. He'd play soprano. He'd play tenor. I played flute.
Wow.
And then, of course, Dave was just. And the thing is, you would watch Dave, and it was like he would almost be levitating. He'd be jumping as he's just digging in so much to his instrument, and no quarter. He's like, it's just full force. So, that to me spoke volumes.
We talked earlier about Bobby Bradford, but the other cat I wanted to talk to you about was Horace Tapscott.
Yes.
Did you get a chance to hang with Horace?
I did not. I knew of his Pan-African Ensemble, and I knew of the cats like in Leonard Park. and I did get to go to
in Lemert Park. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah,
I produced a concert. I always called it Lemert Park.
Lemert. Yeah, that's better, man. That's better. Dude.
So I mean, was he still there? Like, was Horace on this planet when you were cooking?
He was, and I think I saw him perform once. I think it might have been with just a trio or a quartet. I don't even recall where it was, but unfortunately I didn't get a chance to interact with him or talk with him. But seriously, great respect for all he did in that community. Of course, Billy Higgins and the World Stage, that was the place I tried to get to as much as I could early on. Fifth Street Dick's around the corner from the World Stage, that was a happening place as well for the young players there. So, yeah.
Carl Denson, how did he come into your...
I met Carl...
How did you meet Carl?
Well, I was going to Orange Coast College in Costa Mesa at one point.
Yeah.
And I think he played on some big band festival there. He was like the featured soloist with whatever college or high school.
Wait, hold on. He wasn't anywhere close to being a leader at that time.
No, he wasn't.
Where was he at in his career at that point?
So, I think he was just coming. He was certainly making his mark. People were hearing him and going, "Whoa, yeah, this is the cat." But then, so I somehow we got together and we played at the Studio Cafe in Newport Beach or Balboa, wherever it is. Played there a lot. Yeah, that was it. I mean, Carl, he was a very, very strong player.
What kind of instrumentation were you playing? A traditional trap?
Yeah, it was like definitely. It was like a quartet. Carl, then piano, bass, and drums. So yeah, regular quartet. Playing some good stuff, man. And again, another guy, Carl. He's like raging. I mean, fire. The force or the passion he brought to his playing was inescapable. If you were in the room, you were going to see it. You were going to feel it.
Were you playing Denson original music, or were you? I hate labels, but I mean, how was he already doing original tunes?
I think we played a few of his tunes, yeah, but mainly just jazz stuff, maybe some Train, things like that from the I don't know, I almost can't remember now what some of the tunes we played. But things, he had a great admiration for, like Keith Jarrett's American Quartet with Dewey Redman, and of course Train. So we just aspired to try and do things that had that sort of aura about them.
You talk about... Francis, the drumming teacher.
Oh, Francis Awe.
Yeah,
yes,
I'm not familiar with that name, but what?
Yeah.
What was his vibe about? What was he about? A lot of these guys, they don't talk a lot. It's more about application. But what was his deal?
Well, see, Francis also he was teaching. He his talking drum ensemble. He was teaching, and his wife also taught dance. So again, all this was kind of going on at the same time. And being very enamored of talking drumming, from Nigeria. So I got one. I went to one of the United Nations stores that was up in Pasadena and found one that was from Mali, a talking drum. So I wanted to get involved with that because that's something I always was drawn to.
There was something called United Nations stores?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like a store that offered things from around the world, crafts, musical instruments, jewelry, all those different things. So it was a wonderful place to hang out at. So getting with Francis, again, as I think we talked about earlier, I learned the first. It's almost like you learn a bell pattern on the drum, and you tighten up your drum. There's my talking drum right here.
Yeah. Why don't you play a little bit of it?
It's actually in disrepair. This part of it kind of is coming apart. Anyway, the drummers that hold down the rhythmic patterns, and Francis was the master drummer. He has a larger drum. You tie up the drum to a certain pitch. I don't have a tie on it right now, but. So, ensemble most of them would be made up of bell patterns played on different drums. They would interlocked, and then Francis, as the master drummer, would solo on top of that. You know, talking, expounding on whatever. So that's where it was at.
He would. I mean, he would solo over that.
Yeah.
But I mean, how did you learn, or what were you doing essentially with the talking drum? Was it call and response?
Well, it would feel like that. It would feel like that because he would have the lead drummer, the master drummer, Francis himself, would then have. There was a couple others that had been under his tutelage for a long time, and they would sort of interact as well with the ensemble. But again, like I said, the drums that were tied up and were held to a certain note or pitch held down the same pattern all the way through. That was like the base that everything else was held on, you know. And so it made you feel like you were essential. You were definitely essential to the music, and that role was an honorable one. It was a very definitive one, you know, because you are absolutely part of the whole of the tapestry that was being woven, you know.
Can you finish as we wrap up? Can you play something for us?
Yeah. Just looking for something else there. Oh yeah, talking about the bells, the Omar Clay's.
Yeah.
So this is I think this is about the smallest one. So there's still a whole slew of them leading down to about this size.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, so I could not believe it when it came in the post. I had something here, I'm not sure where I'm down at.
Cook, what an honor, my friend.
Thank you, Jake.
Thanks for the education.
Oh man, my pleasure. Thanks so much.
The rhythm experience continues. This is the Jake Feinberg Show.
All right.
See you later.
All right, brother.